Hi everyone. In the previous class, we covered up to the topic of law of demand and its exceptions. In today's class, we will understand what is movement and shift in demand curve. Now, it is a topic that a lot of people get confused, but there is a very small idea that you have to remember so you never get confused with movement and shift. Movement in demand curve happens when the price of the product will change, whereas shift happens when any factor other than the price will change. So let's understand each of these topics separately. Now, movement along the curve of demand. Movement happens or it occurs only when the price of the product changes. Price of the product or the good in itself changes. So let's say this is our demand curve and let's say that this is our curve. So in case of movement, what happens? This is our price. This is the quantity demanded. So suppose when price is suppose this is 20 rupee, your demand is here. Say this is 5. This is suppose 10. Now, when price will change, that is when it becomes 10 rupee, your demand double, your demand become 10. So this particular change that happens along the demand curve, when your price will change, when the price will move here, that is called, see, when the price will move, the movement along the demand curve, on the existing demand curve, that is called movement. Now, movement can happen in two ways. There are two types of movement. One is expansion or extension of demand, and the next one is contraction of demand. Expansion of demand happens when the price falls. That is, when the price will reduce, this is expansion of demand. What is happening? Your demand is increasing. When the price falls, your demand increase, you will move rightward, right and downward on the curve. That right and downward movement along the demand curve is called the expansion of movement in demand curve. Now, what happens in contraction? The opposite. What the price rises in this case. So when the price will rise, what is happening? The the quantity demanded is increasing. So this was your initial price. So when price reduced, the quantity demanded increases. Now the price has increased. So you will move left. See, when the price has increased, you will move towards the left and upward. And in this case, what is happening? The quantity demanded is reducing. This is called the contraction of demand. So let's again see the movement direction diagram or the graph. So if this is your graph and this is the demand curve, now this is your initial price and initial demand. This is your price, this is your quantity demanded. Now this is P0. Now we'll have P1 and P2. That is when the price will reduce, your price reduced, your demand increased. So here you have a downward and right downward movement. When the price increased, your quantity demanded decreased and you have a left upward movement. So this is when the movement is downward and right, it is expansion, and when it is upward and left, it is contraction. So this is movement of demand. Now let us understand what is shift of demand curve. Shift. Now, shift occurs when something other than the price of the product will change. So, what is this something? What are these other factors that can change? One can be the income of the consumer, the population of the target consumers, then the consumer's taste and preferences might change, then the price of related goods, that is, the substitute goods, good ka price can increase or decrease, or the complementary good ka price can increase or decrease. So factors other than the price of the product itself will change. When other environmental factors, including your income, population, related goods price, etc., will change, what happens to the demand curve, or what how the movement or the demand curve will move. That is called shift. Okay. So shift occurs when something other than the price of the product will change. Here, so let's suppose that this is your demand curve. So in demand curve, here we have the price, here we have the quantity. So in your initial price, this is where your demand and this is where your price and demand is currently. Now what happens here is, suppose, see, your price remains constant. It is not changing. So your income increased. Your income increased. Now what happens? You want to purchase more of this particular product. So what is happening? Your quantity increased. Your quantity demanded is increasing. It is moving towards the right. So in this case, but the price is remaining here only. Price is here only, right? And your quantity demanded is increased. So what happened? The whole demand curve has moved now. The whole demand curve has shifted. You are not moving along the initial curve, you are shifting the whole curve to a different position. Now, when the demand curve will move towards the right, when it moves towards right, when the shift is happening towards right, what is happening? There is an increase in demand. In the similar way, suppose your income reduced. When your income reduced, what is happening? You cannot purchase the product as much as you could before, but the price of the product is still the same. So in this case, what is happening? The quantity you demand has reduced, but the price is still the same. So your demand curve will shift towards left. Your demand curve shifts towards left. So in this scenario, there is a left direction shift for your demand curve, and that is your demand is decreased. So when the demand quantity demanded will increase, your demand curve will shift in the right direction. And when there is a decrease in the quantity demanded, your demand curve will move towards the left or shift towards the left. So this shifting of the position of the whole demand curve is called shift. So you have rightward shift or leftward shift. Rightward shift happens when the quantity demanded increases. Leftward shift happens when the quantity demanded decreases. Now let's understand when these scenarios are happening. So when is the rightward shift happening? Mostly when the consumer's income is increasing or the population increases or the price of the substitute good is increasing or your complementary good becomes cheaper. These are the scenarios when the rightward shift is happening. Now, when does the leftward shift happens or the quantity decreases? Your income reduces, population reduces, substitution goods price reduces, or the complementary goods price increases. These are some of the scenarios where the shift in demand curve happens towards the left direction. Now, let us understand another important topic, that is demand analysis. We understood law of demand, that it tells the general rule, that is when the price increases, quantity demanded decreases. When the price reduces, the quantity demanded increases. But while like when the law of demand talks about this general rule, the demand analysis looks at the whole picture to help the companies make smarter decisions. So, this is the process of understanding or predicting how much of the product consumers will buy, how much product consumers will buy. So law of demand told us when demand increases, quantity decreases. When price increases, demand reduces. When price reduces, quantity demanded increases. Now, demand analysis will look at the whole picture and tells us how much the consumer is going to purchase. Now, here we have to identify the tried factors. So, what are tried factors? T stands for taste. That is, has the taste and preferences of the consumers remained the same, or is there any change? Has the trend, has the popularity of that product changed? Then R stands for related good. That is the price of the competitor, your substitutes, or your complementary goods. Has they changed? Is there any difference, or has their price gone up or has it gone down? So you have to understand the environment in which you are working. The next one is income. Has the consumer's purchasing power increased or reduced? The next is population. That is, has your target demographic increased? Is it growing? Then we have the last one, that is expectations. Do people think that a better version of this product will come out soon? So, what are the expectations of the consumer? So, accordingly, there will be changes in the quantity demanded. Now, to understand demand or to do demand analysis, we have two main ways. Okay, two main techniques. Demand analysis have two main techniques. The first one is demand forecasting, and the second one is measuring elasticity. Now, what is demand forecasting? Demand forecasting is using historical data, that is quantitative data, and expert opinion or the qualitative data to predict the future sales. Predict future sales using historical data or expert opinions. That is demand forecasting. Now, this helps the companies to understand how much staff members, the resources they need to have, both material resources as well as human resources they have to plan for. Now, what is measuring elasticity? This is a huge part of demand analysis and it lets businesses know how much of a change will happen in the quantity demanded when price or other factors will change. For example, if the pharmacy will increase the price of insulin, it will not create much change in the quantity demanded for that product because people who have diabetes, who have been prescribed insulin, will have to purchase insulin regardless whether the price increases or not. But if a coffee shop will increase the price of coffee, the chances of the quantity demanded reducing drastically is very high. So, how the quantity demanded reacts or how sensitive it is to the change in price and other factors is called as elasticity of demand. Okay, let's understand demand forecasting. See, managers cannot rely only on guesswork. They must estimate the future requirement before they start production, before they make decisions on pricing, staff, or investments. That process is called demand forecasting. So, what is demand forecasting? It is the systematic estimation, systematic estimation of future demand. Systematic estimation of future demand for a product or service over a specific period of time. That is demand forecasting. In simple words, it answers the questions how much will the consumers buy in the future. Without forecasting, what will happen? You may overproduce. If there is no forecasting, what will happen? You may overproduce or you may underproduce. When you overproduce, what will happen? You will have a lot of losses because there is not as much demand for the products as the supply is there. But when you do underproduce, underproduction will happen. What will happen at that time? The demand is more, but you don't have enough products to meet that demand. So you will be losing customers. So these are the two issues that will happen if you are not able to create a proper estimation of the future demand. So forecasting reduces unnecessary loss, and it will also improve your decision making. So why is demand forecasting important? It is important because it helps in production planning, inventory control, manpower planning, financial budgeting, capacity decisions, and pricing strategies. Now, let's discuss the major method of demand forecasting. So, there are multiple techniques used for demand forecasting. Let us first understand the very first technique for demand forecasting, that is survey method. Now, what is survey method? As the name suggests, the survey method focuses on asking the buyers directly. Asking the buyers directly. Instead of relying on the past data, you will go to the consumers, to the target consumers, and you will ask them directly what they want. We will go to the market and you will collect primary information from the consumers. And there are three important types of survey method. What are they? The first one is complete enumeration method. The first type of survey method is complete enumeration method. What happens in this method? Here we talk to every single potential customer or buyer in the market. So every buyer will have a chance to get data collected from. So you will be talking to every single buyer in the market to collect the data. So you are getting the data from the entire population. The biggest advantage here is that there is no sampling bias because you're randomly collecting, choosing the people, and everyone's information is included here. But what is the major disadvantage of this method? Because you have to talk to a huge number of people, it is very much time consuming. It is time consuming and it is also very expensive. So these are the two major disadvantages of complete enumeration method. So it is very practically difficult for large markets. So this method is suitable only when the market is very small. Only when your target customers is very small can you go and talk to each and every one of them. Right. So complete enumeration method is when you talk to every potential consumer in the market. It has two major disadvantages. One is it is time consuming and the next one is that it is very expensive. The second type of survey method is sample survey method. Sample survey method. In this method, instead of surveying everyone, we select a small representative of the buyers. We then use these responses to estimate the total demand. Here the advantages is that it is faster, It is cheaper than complete enumeration method, and it is more practical. Rather than going to each and every one of your potential customer, it is more practical to choose a sample of the target consumers, right? But here also there is one major issue or a condition. It is that the sample must properly represent the entire population. If the sample is biased or poorly chosen, the forecast will be inaccurate. So here the major problem is that the sample, we have to make sure that the sample is the exact representation of the population. So the success of this method depends entirely on how you select a good sample. Now, the third method, the third type of survey method is end use method. End use method. What is end use method? In end use method, it is slightly different than the complete enumeration method or sample survey method. Here what happens is you survey the industries. In the previous two methods, you were surveying or communicating with the directly with the customers. But in end use method, you will be surveying the industries who use your products as an intermediate input. For example, a tire manufacturer may survey automobile companies to estimate the demands for tires that will be needed. So, if there is a tire company, they might not always directly sell it to the customers, end customer, right? Automobile company is the intermediate here, automobile companies. So if the production of cars will increase, if the automobile industry is expecting a demand in their production of cars, then definitely the requirement for tires will increase. So that is how in end use method you will be surveying the in between or intermediary industries to understand the future demand. So this method is very useful in industrial demand forecasting. So what are the three methods of survey method? Complete enumeration method, where you talk to every single potential buyer in the market. Here the disadvantages, it is extremely expensive and very time consuming. Second type is sample survey method. Here you will be surveying a sample of the population. The advantages are it is faster, cheaper, and more practical. But you have to ensure that the sample is the exact representation of the population. The third method is end-use method, wherein you will be surveying the industries that use your product as an intermediate input. So this is the sample, this is the survey method in demand forecasting. Now, let us move on to the second approach in demand forecasting, that is the opinion poll method. Unlike survey method where we ask consumers directly, here we rely on professional judgment, expert knowledge, and practical experience. This method is especially useful when historical data is not available. Like when you are bringing a new product to the market, where you have no historical data about how this product will work in the market or not. So the market conditions in this scenario is very uncertain. So in this situation, you will go for professional judgment or expert opinion about the product or how it will work in the market. So here also there are different types of opinion poll method. There are mainly four types of opinion poll method. Let's go one by one. The very first one is expert opinion method. Expert opinion method. This is the simplest and most widely used approach. Here we consult with industry experts. In expert opinion method, you will consult with industry experts, industry experts, economists, consultants, or experienced managers. We rely on their deep knowledge and market understanding to predict the future demand. It is quick and very inexpensive. However, it may involve potential bias because forecasts depend on individual judgment. Here, bias is coming from individual judgment. Okay, so that is the first type of opinion poll method, expert opinion method. The second one is Delphi method. In Delphi method, it improves the expert opinion approach. Here we are directly taking one individual's or one expert's opinion about the future demand. But when it comes to Delphi method, what happens? We integrate the expert opinions. We'll bring all the experts' opinions, and instead of asking one person, we will consult with a panel of experts. So the process works in rounds. So here the experts are given the opinions independently. First, the experts will give their opinions independently. Then their views are shared anonymously. They review each other's opinions and refine their own. This continues until a consensus forecast is reached. So all these experts will review each other's opinions and they will update their opinion based on what other experts are also saying. Finally, at the end, it will go like it will iterate multiple times. Finally, we will have one opinion that all the experts can agree upon. So that is the final forecast that we will be taking. That is the Delphi method. Now, this method, what will happen? It reduces the bias. So here in expert opinion method, you are going for an individual expert's opinion, because of which you will have a huge bias. But when it comes to Delphi method, since the experts are updating their opinion based on other experts' opinions, so here a consensus is reached between multiple experts. So different viewpoints are considered here. Because of this, it reduces the bias in the final forecast. Now, the third type of opinion poll method is survey of managerial plans. Survey of managerial plans. Here we examine the future plans of managers. Here what is happening? We examine the future plans of managers. If managers are planning expansion, production increase, or new product launches, this gives insight into expected future demand. So we rely on the internal planning data. Here we are relying on internal planning data. That is survey of managerial plans. And the final method of opinion poll method is market experiments. Market experiments. This is a real world testing method. A company may change the price in a specific region, introduce a new product in a limited market. Then they will observe how consumers will react to that. Based on the response, future demand is estimated. This method provides a practical and more reliable results, but it can be very costly. This is a real world testing method. Real world testing method. So, what are the four different types of opinion poll method? Expert opinion method, where you get the individual one expert's opinion from their practical experience. He can be an consultant, an industry expert, economist, experienced manager, etc. Here, the major problem is there will be a huge bias due to individual judgment. In Delphi method, we will iterate through the opinions of different experts until they all come to a consensus. Here the bias will be reduced. Third one is survey of managerial plans. Here you will look into the future plans of managers, whether they want to expand, increase the production, launch a new product, etc. Fourth one is market experiment, where you will do real world experiment, and based on the observations you will do a demand forecasting. So these are the four different types of opinion poll method. Now let us understand the most analytical approach, that is statistical method. Statistical method. Unlike survey and opinion poll methods, these methods are data driven and mathematical. They rely on historical data and quantitative techniques to predict the future demand. There are three important methods here. The first one is Trend projection method. Trend projection method. In trend projection method, it studies the long-term movement of demand over time. What is it studying? Long-term movement of trend over time. In simple words, it examines the past data, usually a time series data, and it identifies the pattern or trend. If the demand has been steadily increasing over the years, we assume that the trend may continue in the future. However, there is a major limitation here, that is, the method tells us what is happening, but it will not explain why it is happening. It does not establish a cause and effect relationship. So it requires reliable historical data but lacks deeper analysis. So trend projection method looks over historical data, that is long-term movement of the demand over the years. You will have a time series data based on which you will forecast the future demand. The second method is barometric method. Barometric method. In barometric method, it is like a weather barometer. Just like a weather barometer predicts weather changes using air pressure, this method uses economic indicators to forecast the demand. These indicators may include employment rate, income levels, housing statistics, GDP growth, etc. These are leading, lagging, and coincident indicators. If the indicators change, they signal a future change in demand. So, this method is based on observing the broader economic signals. So, in barometric method, you will be observing the economic indicators. Based on the economic indicators, you will predict the demand. Now, the third method is economic method or regression and econometric method, econometric method or regression analysis. Regression analysis. This is considered as the most advanced and scientific method. Here we use statistical tools, especially regression analysis, to identify the cause and effect relationship. Here we identify the cause and effect relationship. So we said that in trend projection method, we forecast the demand based on the past or historical data, but it does not tell the why. It does not tell what is causing this particular effect, why the demand is increasing or decreasing. But when it comes to econometric method, you will be using a cost and you will identify the cost and effect relationship between the demand and other variables around the demand. For example, demand quantity may depend on the price, income, advertising, population. So we'll build a mathematical model like QD, the quantity demanded, will be a function of price, income, the advertisement, etc. And this method is powerful because it explains how much the demand will change when any of these factors will change. So you can identify due to which factor the demand changes and by how much the demand has changed. That is why it is often called as the gold standard method. It is often called as the gold standard method in demand forecasting. However, here what is the issue? It requires technical knowledge, reliable data, and statistical expertise to do that. Now, let's revise what are the different techniques of demand forecasting. The first one was survey method, where you do survey with the population or the target market. It has three types. First one is complete enumeration method. In this method, we talk to every single potential buyer. Then second is sample survey method, where a representation of the population is taken and you will survey the sample only. Third one is end use method, where you will survey the industries who use your products as input. Then the second technique of demand forecasting is opinion poll method. It has four types: expert opinion method, Delphi method, survey of managerial plans, and market experiments. Final type of demand forecasting is the statistical method, that is trend projection, where you study the long-term movement of demand over time. Then you have barometric method, where you analyze the economic indicators and to forecast the demand. And the final one is econometric or regression method, where you understand the cause and effect relationship between demand and other variables. Okay, now that we understand the law of demand, we know that when price increases, the quantity decreases. Quantity demanded decreases. But that is not enough for decision making in a managerial scenario. The real question is, by how much does the quantity change when the price will change? This is where elasticity of demand comes in. Elasticity of demand. Now, what is the meaning of elasticity of demand? It measures the responsiveness or sensitivity. Responsiveness or sensitivity of the quantity demanded to a change in one of its determinants. In simple terms, it tells us how strongly consumers react to changes. If a small price increase causes a large drop in demand, we say that the demand is elastic. Now, if this demand hardly changes, the price has changed, increased very much, but the demand for that product has not changed. That means the demand for that product is inelastic. So, elasticity helps us understand or measure the intensity of reaction. Now, there are three types of elasticity of demand. First one is price elasticity of demand. It means that it measures how the quantity demanded changes or responds to change in price. Second one is income elasticity of demand. This measures how demand changes when consumers' income changes. And the third one is cross elasticity of demand, and it measures how demand for one good or one product changes when the price of another product changes. So when price of a product changes, how it affects the demand for a different product. That is cross elasticity of demand. Now, all these three elasticities of demand help managers make pricing, production, and strategic decisions. So, why is elasticity important? It helps managers to answer questions like, should we increase the price or reduce it? Will the revenue increase or decrease? How sensitive are our customers? Without elasticity, pricing decisions become very risky. Now, today we have discussed movement, shift, and how demand reacts to different factors. But now let me leave you with an important question. If price increases, demand falls. But how much does it fall? Does it fall a little? Does it fall a lot? Or does it not change at all? In the next class, we will study the concept of elasticity of demand in more detail, which helps you measure the intensity of consumer reaction. Thank you.